Well, welcome to another episode of the CVC Home Service Success Network. Whether you're watching this live or you're watching us on one of our replays, on our podcast, on Facebook, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on TikTok, we go all kinds of places with this show. So no matter where you're watching us or what time it is, I want to welcome you to another episode. And just like every week, what we try to come up with is a topic. And this week, I think we've got a really good one that we're going to hit you with. And this topic is going to be desperation hiring, something that I have seen so many people do. And we got a person on here in Cheryl that does interviews for people. And now people are telling us, Cheryl, just bring me somebody that's breathing. Just give me a body. And then what do we hear later on? We hear about the woes of this desperation hiring that we've done. Now, I'm going to warn you, no matter what you do, your new recruit could go bad. You got to go through the onboarding and you've got to inspect for what you expect. And if somebody is not working out, you got to take the action. You got to make the leadership decisions. Just this week, I talked to one of my clients, had an employee been there for a number of years, and now his performance is going south and they don't seem to be able to correct it. So what they've got to do is they got to make that hard decision. And it's an emotional turmoil to go there. But today, the subject matter is desperation hiring. And if you're listening to me, think for a minute. If you're a person that owns a business, that manages a business, have you ever been in this situation? The work is coming in. You're desperate for just a body, just somebody that's got arms and legs, just somebody that can talk, just somebody that can breathe. I see it all the time. So, Cheryl, hiring is your area of expertise. Before I do this, Cheryl said, hey, you better not even call me on this today, but I'm not going to let her go. So, Cheryl, this is your area of expertise. And people do call you and engage you, and they are telling you, just bring me a warm body. You were telling me about one client just yesterday that said, just hire me somebody, anybody. So when I say desperation hiring, what comes to mind for you?
People. No. What comes up is this time of year, especially in the niche that we're in, it's the people that did not leave their ads open or they didn't open them early enough. All of a sudden, we're starting to get fall work starting to pick up again. And yeah, they're wanting somebody that breathes. I'm having people that work in over 100-degree weather, let's just say that, that it's hard to get employees at this stage of time because it's just too hot. And yes, I'm getting asked, I just need a body. I need somebody to carry a bucket. I need somebody to do something. If you don't, there's only a couple of us and we're exhausted. So now they're ready to take people out of office seats or whatever, put them up on above 100-degree roofs and expect them to perform. And it doesn't work that way. Number one, you're just throwing money down the well because you're not going to keep them. Could we train them in cooler weather? Yes. Can you train them in this kind of heat? They won't learn, they won't stay. And I go through this, it seems like every day somebody's calling that didn't leave their ads up when they should have. My preference is to leave ads up year round.
Right.
And then look for the gold nugget.
Right. So one of your recommendations to people is recruiting never ends.
Never.
And what you're also looking to do is maybe you got B and C grade players and you got to find some A grade players in order to get to where you want to go. Am I reading you correctly?
Yeah, and it's so much easier to find A grade players when you're not in season and desperate, because
Gotcha.
that's when the other people are looking to improve themselves. Other job positions are looking for job positions that have a job,
Yeah.
and you get the better player.
Gotcha. So, Brandy, let's go over to you for a minute. You work with office staff, you work with systems for offices, you train office people. So, again, You probably see people that bring in someone and put them on their phones out of desperation. And what happens is these people are paying a tremendous amount of money for a lead this day and time to make the telephone ring. And I just listened to calls just this morning, listened to call recordings where I wouldn't have bought from that company. So, what's your opinion? What's your input on this subject of desperation hiring?
Yeah, you bring up a good point. We go back to, I always say that the phone people are the director of first impressions. We have no work without those people on the phone. And so if you take the wrong person and put them on the phone, you're killing your business. This subject's actually very timely for my company. We are the smallest we have been in many years. Now, that's been intentional because we've had a slower year. And so we haven't replaced bodies as they have left. But now we are hiring. And in fact, today I'll do my third round of open interviews. And in a week and a half, I've had over 60 applicants. And on Wednesday, I had two that came in out of the ones that came in that we probably could have hired them. But I didn't have that feeling of, yes, let's go. Like, I can't let this one get away. And that's the feeling I want to have. Like, I want to be like, okay, we've got to get on to the next step. I don't want this person to get away, because the way I look at it, it's two roads, right? So I can either desperation hire and take that road and then pray that they show up, pray that they learn to do the job, pray that their drug test comes back clean, and deal with the drama and all that comes with that and the headaches that come with it. Or we can be a little bit more booked out, keep our quality up, and have a whole lot less headaches.
Yeah. Would you agree, Brandy, that even though our belief is the phone should be answered, but you would be better with the calls going to voicemail than someone that just plain loses our lead that came in the door? Would you agree with that assessment?
110%.
Yeah, got you covered. So, Randy, I'm going to go over to you. In your life, one of the things you do is you have a lot of friends that are in small home service contracting businesses there in the Rochester area. So I know the other day I saw you and some friends sitting around the fire pit. Y'all were networking all this. How often does the subject of hiring and hiring good people, how often is that a subject matter when you've got these fire pit discussions going on at your home up in Rochester?
They come up all the time. And typically it's their first hire or next hire. And we're trying to just help them decide if maybe that next hire is in the office because the owner, is just taking on too much and don't realize that that's not the best fit for them. And like Brandy said, you get the right person in there. I like that, the director of first impressions. I've never heard that before, but that's 100% true. When someone asks us, like, what does somebody in our phone bank, right, the phone bank, they're shocked at how much those people make. We're not looking for minimum wage pay because we're looking at a higher rate of return with that best first impression. And then likewise, when it comes to hiring, we tell people all the time, like, widen your focus. Don't look exactly in your industry for people to be hired, because there are quality people in other industries that would take a lateral move to be trained and then elevate from there. Quite often, like a lot of our lead technicians, this is like a funny running joke. They're all previous restaurant or pizza managers, because those are quality people who run an entire ship understaffed, undersupported. And then when they get to us and they get support and they get a quality of life too, like they're working a regular shift with holidays, we find that going outside of our industry and then just training them, that's the best place to start.
Yeah, and you know something I found out as a trainer, Randy, it is easier for me as a trainer to train someone who hasn't done this than to retrain that individual. The hardest student that I'll ever have has 20, 25 years of experience. And this experience has built into them habits that we got to break. And that is much tougher, my opinion, than it is to take someone that's green. And you just said an interesting thing. There's something about these pizza makers up there in Rochester, because we got a friend, Anthony. and one of Anthony's best masons, according to
I know
those
who you
guys.
are. I know who you're talking about. Yep.
You know, it is. He talks about it, but you thought, okay, maybe a pizza guy that's flipped pizzas, maybe this is a forte for being a bricklayer. So you've cooked pizzas in the wood-fired oven. You know how to handle that pizza and flip it around and move it around. But I was amazed when I went there because we got to admit, Anthony's been in bricklaying all his life, and he's talking about this guy being better than him that's got
Young
no
Nate.
background.
Yeah, young Nate. Yeah.
Yeah, young Nate.
Yeah, but I really don't. I mean, it's funny to say that pizza makers, but it's realistically the management, right? And because they're quite often, again, they're unsupported. It's one person who's in charge of that restaurant all the time, no matter what. The owner's removed. So when you become a supported, an owner who supports your staff, and you can pull people in like that. Now, let's flip this back real quick, and I'll make it fast. When COVID happened, a lot of people were like, "Oh, what are we going to do? There's not enough people and jobs." And I'm like, this is the time to take quality people from other industries who may have never looked to come to a cleaning and restoration company because it didn't make sense. But without a job, it was a great time to have a conversation, and we scored a lot of great people during that time.
Yep.
And now it becomes like part of our process.
Well, one of the things our buddy Tommy Mello, who we've interviewed on here a couple times, when he wrote the book Elevate, he gave what is called his 5 pillars, and pillar number 4 is recruiting. And then pillar number 5 is having the system. So when they come in, they have the systems to follow to quickly come up to speed. The business owner has taken all that information that's between his ears, and he's gotten it down in a system that works and trains these new people. So Josh, let's go over to you. You got a background in both the service side, but I'm going to deal with the retail side right now. And bringing someone in, you're sitting there, your staff is overloaded. You got more people coming in than your people can help, can guide. And customers are just standing around. And you're probably faced, I got to get a body in here. But knowing you, there's been some bad hires in your career. And then all of a sudden, what's happening, again, we have paid a fortune to get this person to come across our threshold. And from desperation hiring, they're ready to head right back across that threshold and get out of your store as fast as they can. So what's your input on the desperation hiring?
Well, first of all, that they will turn off more customers than you'll get. As I've been secret shopping some potential clients, I'm not getting any help. Randy doesn't know this, but I'm 6'3". I'm size of an NFL lineman. I'm hard to ignore, and that, like, I went into stores. I stood there in the Hearth store for 30 minutes, and no one said a word to me. So very much, it can be a real put off, because I walked out the door, no information or confusing information, and that was really bad. Or I've gone back and listened to phone calls with ex-managers who've gotten into arguments against our own policy. So I've definitely seen that firsthand.
Yeah. And not only that, let's add this to it. In today's world, consumers love to write bad reviews. And there's nothing like somebody writing a review that, hey, I went in this store and nobody helped me, or I called the phone and that was a real dummy that answered the phone. Brandy, are those the kind of reviews you want for Blues Brothers?
Heck no. Somebody be getting fired.
Somebody be getting fired, right? And you've went through this. And even when you go through all the steps, you can still have hiring failures, okay? You can have hiring failures. And it can be disheartening. I mean, we take a period of time. You had to take a leave of absence from CVC Success Group to deal with Blues Brothers until you got the problem. Brandy had to go back to being the CSR, okay? And I see this happen in businesses where people have to step back in. They're ready to be out of the business and be like Randy Sperling is and sitting down in Florida right now. That's what they want to be with the pool in the background. But you've been there. So Cheryl, what additional thoughts do you have on this desperation hiring? And how do you prevent getting into this mode?
The way to prevent it is not remove your quest for candidates, because once you stop hiring, it stops coming in, and then you have to begin over again. I don't care. I mean, we have a company that all you got to do is call them and they'll start your ads back, but there's still that period of time before the world notices you again. But I like leaving it open, because what I'm looking for at that point, like y'all said, pizza makers, hotel people, the people that work in the management of hotels make good people too, because they're under the gun forever. And if you were a child and a farmer's son, you will make a good tech, because you know what work is. And that's a lot of the problems with just hiring off the shelf people. And that's not exactly what I should say here, but that's an honest answer. Off the shelf people, when you hire them, you're getting a box. You don't know if there's Cheerios in it or Cracker Jacks. So you want to take time to nurture these people. And if you have to train them from square A to breathe, you've lost all that other good time that brings them into the realm of being a good employee.
Dead on the
I
money.
think to go back to what Jerry was asking too, Cheryl, it's like, if you're hiring when you need it, it's already too late. It's just like marketing. It's already too damn late. So when we're sitting with our friends in the fire pit and stuff, we're telling them, don't be afraid to hire because you're worried about seasonality. Like, if you're worried about that, your business has already had some problems, right? You should be forward thinking, like, train them now, prepared, so you can then over market to get into that season and be strong in your staff. I know, like, we have a new hire coming on. My daughter's going to move on to grad school. So Nicole's going to come on into our office, but we want her to attend like one of Brandy's classes. I think you have one coming up, she said, but like attending that class, because again, there's stuff that I don't know that would be helpful. If I tell her everything I know, that doesn't change my business, right? My business is here. So for us to send Nicole to Brandy's class coming up is important. We're going to train Nicole over 8 weeks. Can she learn it in 2? For sure. But I don't want we want best. And so when you look at hiring, you have to hire in your off season and train. And also that gives you time to flip them out. If they don't work, get rid of them quick, because you're not in a hurry. So I love if we change the conversation from desperate to just like pre-plan, prepare, like really be ahead of it.
Well, it's much easier, in my opinion, and this was what I tell my clients, it's much easier to search for work than it is to search for people.
Yeah. And the other thing too is like, and I know we should probably mention it, but if you don't get that hire, it's not the end of the world, because I know personally for us, we don't close every lead because of our pricing. That means we're right at the right spot. I'd rather keep the pricing a little high and not just desperate hire and then follow up and just, I feel like those jobs are going to be more losses than losing a couple of leads.
Yeah. And my buddy Bart Ogden out in Wichita, Kansas, saying being overstaffed is not necessarily a bad thing. It provides for flexibility and aids in unexpected abscess. And I'll add something else that I learned from Bart a few years ago. And Bart said the following: I have come to the conclusion that the career of an average worker is going to be shorter and shorter and shorter. And all the demographics and all the research proves this out. You're not going to be hiring 20-year employees as a rule moving forward. It's not where we're at today. You're lucky if you get 2 years. So what you've got to do is you've got to have this constant cycle of people coming in. It's kind of like having a well. And if the well don't have enough water, I don't care how much you pump, there ain't nothing coming out of that well. So Brandy, let's go back to you over here for a minute, okay? And what I want to go back to you is, how important is it for this onboarding process after we have hired who we think is going to be a superstar? How important is that onboarding process to get them in? We just heard Mr. Sperling talk about an 8-week training period. But tell us about that onboarding, that initial onboarding. Why is that so important in your opinion?
Well, that's where our job comes in, right? As the employer, we have to set them up for success. And so many times I've seen people get this wrong. They bring in somebody and their second days, they put them on the phone, or the first day they take a technician and put them out on the trek. How terrifying is that? So we have to take our time, give them the proper education, let them know about the company, let them know how they call in sick, let them know who to contact if they get a flat tire on the truck, give them all the processes and systems to be successful in our company.
Yep, and that's what I said. And we had this big thing with a younger generation. One of the rising problems is anxiety, where the younger generation goes through anxiety very easy. And if you throw them into the fire too fast, they're going to run. It's what's going to happen. So again, this is in the onboarding process. It's one of the things that I've learned from Brandy. One of the things is, as a group, we've learned so much from each other, and we've learned how it works. So let me go over here to Josh. Josh, one of the things I've watched you do, I've sat in your office and watched you do onboarding in the first day there. In fact, I told you, this is probably overwhelming. You're going at it so fast, so furious, so tell me a little bit about what is the Josh Kelly method of onboarding.
Well, my onboarding revolves around teaching them where to find the answers. That's my first thing. I mean, obviously we go through paperwork and stuff like that, but we have a resource internally that tells them everything about their job. And it's for every department is outlined like that. So the first thing I do is just tell them how to communicate with the other staff. Here's the internal chat day one. They're given a Google chat in Google email day one. Doesn't matter what level that employee is at. I always give them a company email. And to me, I think that's a respect thing. To include someone as part of the team, because you're telling them they're on your team, but they're not good enough to have an email address. I think that's kind of a put off for some people. So then we go through just how to log in on our systems. And then I give them a business card that says, okay, here are the links that you have to know day one. Keep that in your wallet. So that way there's no calling. I don't have my username, password. I don't know where to go. Here's the number one thing. You need to know where to go. And it's right here. This is the website address. It's closed, and you're going to need this username and this password. And that's the very first thing we do with them.
Yeah, got you covered.
That's the phone tree. That's the internal chat where we go for meetings, all of that.
Yeah. So Brandy, you put up, I love that Bart. So I love that too. He's defining it as waterboarding if you don't do it properly and not a true onboarding. I think Bart just gave you a quote that you can use in your processes. What do you think?
I like it. Yeah, I'll have to give this guy, Tim, credit for it because I don't like to take credit. I like to give credit where credit's due. I think that's where it goes back to having it outlined, right? So for everyone, for all my clients, we sit down when they're hiring and bringing somebody on and we draw out a calendar. This is who they're going to be with this day. This is who their preceptor is going to be. And we define it exactly what they're going to be doing each day, where they're going to be, what videos they're going to be watching, what skill they're going to be learning. And going back to your anxiety thing, that just automatically, if they can look at that calendar, know, okay, this is what's coming up tomorrow, this is what's coming up next week, that really helps to decrease that anxiety.
Got you covered. So we went around the table. So let's go one more time. Randy, you got any additional thoughts on the subject matter of either desperation hiring or on onboarding of what we're talking about here?
No, I think the onboarding is super important, and anxiety, even outside of work, we've seen with some of the younger technicians. And then just being aware, Josh said something awesome. If you're going to hire somebody to your team, you give them uniforms, right? You give them an email address. And too often in our industries, we're talking to blue collar, hands-on type people. But if we treat them like I treat my people like staff and team and all that good stuff, right? It's more than just what they're typically used to. Here's a t-shirt and throw this over here. That's not how it goes, right? So just giving them an email is like a higher level feeling. And that's what you want, right? So if your staff feels like that, they perform like that, that turns around. There's so much that I see with other small businesses when they're afraid to hire or like you said earlier, like desperate hiring. They're always just a little too tight in their budgets. And I think it's a mindset thing. Back to the whole, like, if you can't staff, but you still have a lot of leads, that means your price can go up. So if you can't pull a good staff member, raise your price. Let the customers tell you no, and the ones that say yes, you can service. That can last for a while. And then you'll also see that maybe that's where your price point should have been, which allows you to then hire somebody at a higher level because you're making more money. So it's one of those, you have to just kind of document and watch it all.
Yeah, and here's a story that I heard a couple years ago, and this is a story about a new guy that was hired, and the company hired this new guy. And Brandy, this guy met all the criteria. You would have been thrilled to have this guy on your staff. He brought everything to the table. His disc profile was perfect. His assessments, he was the right guy. So he comes in for the first day of work, and the boss meets him and said, "Hey, that's going to be your truck out there, number 17. So here's what I want you to do. I need you to go out there because the guy that was running it just quit. And I need you to clean that truck up and get it ready for service." A little bit later, the boss walked outside and the guy was nowhere to be found. He was gone. And so the boss called him and said, "Hey, Joe, where'd you go, brother?" And the guy said, "Listen, I didn't come in here and come to work for you to clean up somebody else's crap. This was not the job for me. Best of luck, but goodbye." So again, was it the right process? No. Hiring someone and then telling them to clean up somebody else's crap, that's starting on a bad path. Randy, when I tell that story, you had a lot of facial expressions during that. What was going through your mind?
Oh, Lord. I don't blame the guy. And that's kind of where my final thoughts go to. I think you have to remember that we're not just hiring them, they're hiring us too. And I think an important part of making sure that we choose the right people is setting expectations during that interview process. I had to fire my husband from interviewing because I said he used to just paint rainbows. It was just like there was a pot of gold at the end of the job. And what I do is I don't make it all negative, but I do tell them, look, when I've done exit interviews, this is why people have left. It was too hot, or it was too cold, or they didn't like how we went from 400 phone calls a day to 20 phone calls a day. And so I want to set those expectations so that they know what they're walking into. And then, as you guys know, I'm a huge believer in a job shadow. I call it the third interview. And I think that's so important to set them up for that third interview where they actually ride along on the truck or come in the office and see the work and actually see what they're doing. I've told the story many times. I've had people come back from that and say, "Heck no, this is not what I thought. Thank you very much." If I had hired those people, we would have wasted a lot of time and a lot of money, and then they would have quit in their first or second week.
Correct.
We do the same thing. We do a per diem. It's the second interview, but the per diem is like, okay, why don't you ride along for a day? We'll pay you for the day. Let us know. We'll let you know. It's like a date, you know?
Yeah, but
Berlin's nicer than me. He pays him for it.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't pay them?
No.
Oh, shit. Yeah,
It's the third interview.
I want them to show up.
Hey, I got to tell you, Randy, you don't understand. Her and Jeremy are Dave Ramsey people, okay? They watch every nickel that goes out of that business, believe me. If you don't believe me, try to sell them something and watch her beat you up.
I
okay?
also, Sperling, they get a list of expectations for that day. And if they show up even a minute late, I meet them at the door and say, "I'm sorry, one of our core values is punctuality. So you failed," and I don't let them shadow.
She's a pain in the ass. I'm telling you, man. So everybody thinks I'm the mean one. I tell them she's the mean one.
No, it's okay. You hold your ground.
Yeah. Okay. So, Brandy, is anything else you would add in for your final thoughts?
Come to my CSR class next week. If you have those CSRs that are just needing that little extra training prior to busy season, we have 11 of the spots are filled, so we're almost full, but they can register through the NCSG, and it's going to be here in Kansas City next Thursday and Friday, and we would love to have them.
So what you serving for lunch at training this week?
So I was debating on that this morning because typically I've done wraps on Thursday and barbecue on Friday because it's hard to come to Kansas City without barbecue. But we always have so much barbecue left over. So I'm pondering that today because I've got to place the catering order today.
Well, maybe you just need to learn to buy enough. Maybe it's whoever's making the purchases overestimating the meal cost.
Catering company providing too much.
There you go. So, Josh, any final thoughts from you on the subject matter of desperation, hiring, and onboarding?
Fire them fast.
Hire them fast.
Fire them fast.
Fire them fast. That's right. When they're not meeting your criteria, you got to nip it in the bud. That's one of the things that Brandy and Cheryl have been mad at me because I keep saying nip it in the bud. I love to quote Barney Fife, and I can watch Cheryl's face every time I say nip it in the bud. There you see what I get. Okay.
Yeah,
So
I was at a meeting in San Antonio, and I get a call from my ops manager about the hire that's been there that week, and they're already listing off complaints, and I'm like, well, 86 of them now,
yeah,
because he's like, well, he was complaining it's too hot, and I'm like, it was 86 with low humidity. Like, it's time to go. It doesn't get any better than this.
that's right. Yeah, if he's complaining about that, he sure ain't gonna be happy when it's 22 degrees out there, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, Cheryl, this falls in your area of expertise. You deal with this every single day. Every time I walk past your office, I'm hearing interviews from all walks of life up there. I've heard it all in the background. What's your final words of advice in this subject matter?
Look at what you've got coming up and plan for it. And I don't mean that for the next week. You've got a business. You know what business you're in. You know what your season is. Don't wait till the beginning of that season to bring a person in. It's not fair to you, but it's also not fair to that person, because I'm like Jerry. I like people that I don't care if they come, and that's scary, isn't it? But I don't like to hire people that have already been in this particular field as much as I do that have not, because you can train them the way you want to. And right now I'm having people saying, steal me somebody from someone.
Yeah.
And my ethics don't let me do that. Number one, they don't pay enough for me to do that.
Yeah, it was like recently, one of our clients just had this experience. Randy had a new hire. The first day at work, before the guy left for the day, he asked for a loan to pay for a hotel room that night. Okay.
Mhm.
This tells us there's something. And this guy was interviewed. What are the questions that we didn't ask? I guess you got to ask, if you got a place to stay, you got a place to live. What, tell us a little bit about, can we ask that question, Brandy? Do you have a home?
No.
No, unfortunately that would be illegal.
So
And
it's
that's the problem with, and I think Brandy will agree, that's the problem with having to do an interview. The answers to the questions that you really need, you can't ask. Now, a lot of times you can say something that would make them answer that question without asking it, but they have cut the hiring questions back so far that basically if they're breathing and they're working.
Mhm.
Yeah, you
And
can't ask if they have a car, but you can say, do you have reliable transportation to
Mhm.
and from work?
okay.
Right.
So Brandy, these are the type questions that you actually go through when you're doing your office manager's training and your owner's training. Am I correct?
Correct. Yes, and there's a test that they take, and they're always shocked at what you can ask and what you can't ask. I think Sperling had a comment too.
Yeah.
Well, I
Go
was
ahead,
just going to
Randy.
say, I know my wife, as a real estate agent, cannot ask a lot of questions that are very similar to hiring. But as real estate investors, there's ways around it. Oh, I forgot. I need you to sign something. Let me walk out to your car. And then you look in their car. Do they have a car? Like maybe, we need a clean license, but you look in the car because you want to see how they keep the inside of their vehicle.
Yep.
If the personal vehicle is trashed, so will the apartment you're renting them or the service truck that they're running.
So be observant. But what you need to do is get out there, head to some of Brandy's classes. Hey, we provide the hiring interviewing services through CVC, but hey, we'll train you how to do it. It ain't a matter that we got to do it for you. We just want to see you do right, and we want to see you be successful. Well, anyway, this has been another episode of the CVC Home Service Success Network. We hope this has been a valuable topic for you. Hey, if you like this, give us a like on the medium that you're watching it on. Again, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn. This becomes a podcast. It's on all the major podcast channels. You can tune us in on iTunes. And now we're even uploading into TikTok, and we're getting piles of views. It's really been amazing. Our last episode, we've had over 20,000 uploads. So we're really happy. We're getting the word out. is coming in. So reach out to us here at CBC Success Group. Let us know how we can help you take your business dreams and turn them into your business realities. And let's eradicate this chaos and crap from our business lives. And with that, we'll see you next week on the next episode of the CBC